And across the fence, changing climates and changing minds. We're highlighting two efforts by UVM Extension to protect and preserve Vermont's natural resources. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's Clean Water Week in Vermont. From lakes and rivers to wetlands and farm fields, the Agency of Natural Resources is hosting events to raise awareness about clean water. The theme of Clean Water Week is All In. To get the word out on how farmers are all in on clean water, UVM Extension's Champlain Valley Crop, Soil, and Pasture Team was at Addison County Fair and Field Days earlier this month. The team, led by agronomist Jeff Carter, answered questions from the public about agriculture and water quality.
Addison County Fair and Field Days is a pretty popular fair in this state, and there's a lot of participants who come from out of state as well as from non-farming communities. So when they come here, they want to see the cows, they want to eat cotton candy, but they love to come through the 4-H youth hall to see what the 4-H kids are doing, and then we position ourselves here so that we can talk about what the parents of 4-H kids are doing. And the parents are the ones who are running the farms, and then we get to talk about them about farming practices. Of course, we get the questions and comments about GMO crops, about the different weed control options and things like that. So it's good to engage with people in a calm environment where we can just talk to them about what's going on in agriculture. This year we're kind of highlighting some no-till production because we've been working with farmers about cover crops and no-till. And so the water quality issues that are addressed by using no-till farming, of course, that's what we're talking about. We have displays, of course, with the stream table. You know, folks from the Sea Grant program are here to show off the stream table so we can learn about streams and how they move. The rainfall simulator shows how when we have a cover crop that we can clean up the water as it moves through the soil. We have a no-till corn planter here. We have a no-till grain drill here. So we have things to talk about, and we like to show farmers that. We have displays about corn crops, hay, soybeans, how to use pasture properly. But really it's about having people stop and talk to us about what are farmers doing, how are they doing, because everybody knows we're having a bad year this year. It's been very wet. Unfortunately, maybe a third of the corn in Addison County never got planted, or it looks very bad. So people are concerned about that because the hay crop isn't doing as well, the corn crop isn't doing as well, and we want to see these farmers survive. When I first started an extension over 30 years ago, there wasn't this display here. There was just some hay in a contest. So we built it into an educational display. The farmers are the ones who bring in their crops to show off. They have a little competition with corn and hay and soybeans. But they like it because it gives us a backdrop to talk to the public about what they're doing for farming. They like it because they can come visit with us about their farming products. And believe it or not, I mean, a blue ribbon does mean something.
Because we run the crop exhibit here at Addison County Field Days, the farmers all come to check out who won blue ribbons, and so we try and have something that they'll be drawn to and something new for them to see and something that we've been working with recently. So we've been bringing our no-till drills, which we see, and farmers really love to look at those, but then we try and bring something new to see for the farmers as well. But the second audience really is the public, and we see by far more members of the public here at Field Days than we do farmers. And so we're also just trying to introduce people to what are the basics even of what are the crops our farmers are growing. People don't even always understand that. And then what are the kinds of equipment and technology that farmers use in order to grow their crops in a responsible way. And so people are always very intrigued. Everyone's intrigued by equipment, so especially at Field Days. So it's a good kind of starting point to talk to them about that kind of stuff. About, well, it's not just a regular corn planter, it's a no-till corn planter with a roller crimper for the cover crop. And then we can start talking about soil health and why that's important and how our farmers are really trying to address those soil health issues and water quality issues. When people leave here, the public, they leave knowing more about farming in Addison County and in Vermont, more about the crops and why, like when they drive past the field of corn, what's really happening out there, and also about what our farmers are doing to really protect the environment and water quality. We're all in has sort of been the motto here for Lake Champlain, and so an effort like Clean Water Week is really about we are all in, and you can see all the different kinds of organizations and groups of people being represented that are going to talk about what they're doing. And when we do that, I think people walk away from those events impressed by how much gets taken into account when a farmer does something, whether it's planting a field of corn, when to bale their hay, what they feed their cows, and what they do to protect water quality. People are really like, wow, I had no idea that all these things got taken into account before the farmer could make that decision. So.
When we talked about cover crops, it was usually met with like smirks and, like, yeah, whatever, it's never going to work here, that kind of attitude. And now it's like, just in the past 5 years, it's been amazing how much has been adopted, as far as that practice. And the same thing with no-till. I mean, we were just blatantly told by most farmers 5-6 years ago that no-till wouldn't work on Addison County clay. And now you see, quite a bit, so it has, I feel like we were part of that conversation. We can't take 100% credit for it, but we were part of that conversation, getting it started around here. You don't have to convince them on no-till anymore, right? They're convinced. They need to know the specifics on how to do that. Cover crop mixes, same thing. You don't need to convince them about cover crops. They bought into it, but they kind of want to know, like, should I plant radishes or rye, or the actual specifics. Absolutely right. And we were like, we maybe started the conversation, like I said, and we were met with like I said, smirks a couple of years ago, but now people listen, and it's they're seriously interested.
The farmers are here showing and being proud of what they do every day, and the public is here to experience it, and really that is Extension's role. Like, a farmer couldn't be here at field days every day and sharing that message, but we can kind of share that message for them. And so we do that in lots of different ways, whether it's a piece of equipment or just simple things about what crops are being grown in the field next to their house. And then we can kind of share that story. They do really care. Like, people get really interested and they start asking questions, and they thank us for sharing that information, and they say, oh wow, I learned so much. And that's our hope, that we're not going to reach everyone at field days, and they might have walked in this barn for some completely other reason, but we hope that when they leave, they've left with just a little bit more information. And I'm always, that's why we keep coming back every year, right? We're here all week. It's a big investment of our time and our energy, but it is definitely something that's really important to educate the public. And as less and less of us are farming, it's more and more important for Extension to be able to get that message out to everybody.
Well, our thanks to the Champlain Valley Crop, Soil and Pasture Team for taking the time to visit with Across the Fence associate producer Keith Silva. In the time we have left, we're going to learn about another aspect of Extension's work. The Center for Sustainable Agriculture was recently awarded a $250,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The work will focus on agriculture and climate change. Joshua Faulkner is the center's Farming and Climate Change Coordinator. Congratulations on the grant.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks for joining us today. So tell us about this grant.
Sure. So this is a project that's really focused on trying to make a few sectors of our working lands more resilient to the effects of climate change. And that includes more extreme events, more flooding, more years like this right here where, with the excess precipitation, too much rainfall, and then even years like last year where there was drought, more disease and more pests. All these things are making it more difficult to farm and manage forest lands in a changing climate. This is a project that's co-directed by Rachel Chapman, also at UVM Extension, as well as the USDA Northeast Climate Hub, and we have partners around the region, other land-grant universities, Cornell Extension, University of Maine, Rutgers, and Penn State, and we're really all coming together to develop a pretty unique, innovative educational program to make these lands more resilient and these businesses more resilient to climate change.
How will the money be used?
Right, so this is a one-year grant. So we have to work fairly quickly, but we'll start with really digging into the literature, some of the scientific information about how effective other climate change outreach programs have been, and really what practices for our farms and forest lands are most effective for building resilience. Then we'll bring all of our partners together and really divide them up by their expertise into 4 specific subgroups that focus on what we think really capture a bulk of the working lands in the Northeast. So we'll have a curriculum for vegetable and small fruit farmers, for dairy farmers, for tree fruit growers, and also for our forest land managers. And those groups will develop a curriculum that is really uses a peer-to-peer education style to deliver this information to our farmers and forest managers.
Why is peer-to-peer so important?
That's a great question. That's really at the core of this project, is that peer-to-peer. We know in Extension from previous efforts and from experience around the country that peer-to-peer or farmer-to-farmer is really one of the most effective and one of the most trusted forms of education and knowledge transfer to get farmers to change their practices and to do things a little differently. So what we're doing is we're going out into communities around the Northeast, and we're finding farmer leaders. So farmers who are well respected, well spoken, successful in their businesses, good land stewards, and we're going to provide them with good science-based information and send them back out into their communities and allow them to mentor or provide that information to other younger, newer farmers and other farmers. And
because they really have street cred.
That's right. They have street cred. They are the people those other farmers look up to. And so it's an exciting way to think about how we're kind of spinning Extension and doing it a little bit differently.
Now, we've talked before about your work on monitoring projects that look at water under farm fields. How's that project going?
That project's going really well. So that was a project where we were monitoring what runs off of kind of the typical farm practices, and then implementing some alternative practices and looking at comparing those to one another. Not just what runs off, but what moves down through the root zone, what we capture in the subsurface, as well as looking at the economics of those practices and the greenhouse gas emissions associated with those practices. So it's a broad project. It's a 4-year project. This year has been, as we know, challenging for farmers, not the best year.
Right.
But for us, it's been actually a really good year in terms of being able to collect data to catch that water that's running off and that water that's moving down through the soil. So we're not quite ready to talk about any hard results, but we're really building a strong story, and we've seen some interesting things.
Okay. Well, another project that you've discussed with us previously deals with using wood chips instead of concrete on barnyards. What's the update on that effort?
Sure. So that's right. That's a kind of an alternative way of winter management, of using wood chips that are something that's more comfortable for the cattle, that absorbs a lot of the rainfall instead of producing a lot of runoff. And we've had some workshops. There's a lot of interest around the Northeast in Vermont. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be visiting 2 farms to talk about implementing this on their farms and their businesses. So we just see an incredible amount of interest. People from the Midwest, from the South, are calling, wanting to learn about this and how they can do this on their farms. And I think as we get into the fall, we'll see Vermont farmers really start to think more about their winter management, and I do expect the interest will ramp up even more then.
Especially since we've in such a wet cycle.
That's right. That's right. And this is a fantastic practice for these wet conditions, these muddy conditions that we see so often, late fall, early spring. Yeah.
So have other farmers in Vermont installed these wood chip pads?
So we have one in Waitsfield that we did we hosted a workshop on, and then there's one in Charlotte as well, a farmer that implemented one of these, and we've just had a workshop on there at that farm as well. And then there's one in New Hampshire where actually a buffalo farm is implementing one of these, and that's almost complete. So we're getting some good experience and starting to learn more and more about how we use these in New England.
Are there economic benefits to using these wood chips?
I think so. I think it's, of course, the farms are buying these wood chips that are the wood chip that we make here in some of the mills are making that's used for heating schools, and Middlebury College heats with wood chips. That's the kind of wood chip we want. So these farmers are providing some business for these mills that are making that wood chip, and of course, in a roundabout way, that provides jobs for loggers and those working in the woods. And
I think some of the work that you've been doing has been challenged lately by different climates, because we're talking about water this year. Last year there was a drought. It was
a drought, and last year it was really the outreach was really all about irrigation and how important it is to conserve water and build healthy soils so that we can absorb what water we do have and bridge these droughty periods. And it's the exact opposite thing this year. So that's one of the things with climate change is there are a lot of challenges, but there's so much unpredictability in climate change. You just never know what you're going to get. The normal, we throw the normal out the window in farming and land management.
You got to be ready for anything.
That's right, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.